everyone, and welcome to the Whole Wellness Mama Summit, where we are unlocking the healthiest, less stressed mom in you using strategies from various experts. I'm your host, Amy Nesbitt, and I am excited to talk about designing our lives, including our work life, to live the life we want with Dave Evans. He has a lot of experiences in well-known companies and universities, but has been on a mission, including helping others to find their own mission. His many twists and turns in life included him accepting an invitation to work at Apple, where he led product marketing for the mouse team and introduced laser printing to the masses. Then he went with his boss at Apple when he left to start Electronic Arts, joined as the company's first VP of talent. And having participated in forming these corporate cultures at Apple and Electronic Arts, he decided his best work was helping organizations build creative environments where people could do great work and love doing it. So from there, then he went out to do management consulting, as well as help students at UC Berkeley and Stanford think through this big question of what should I do with my life? So for my personal connection, I actually took his course back in college, which was only a few years back, about my calling. And as a wide-eyed college student, it shaped some of my thoughts about what I wanted for my future. So fast forward to after college and friends starting to have kids, I was at my friend's baby shower. I saw Mr. Evans and went, wait a minute, and finally put together that I was friends with two of his very smart kids. So what a fun small world that we live in. And when I started brainstorming people I wanted to come alongside with me in this summit, I thought of him. So with that, welcome, Dave.
Amy, good to see you again. What year did you take DYL at Stanford?
Berkeley.
No, you're going to Berkeley. That's right, it was Berkeley. So what year, do you remember the year?
So I think it was 05 or 06.
Yeah, that was about the fourth or fifth rendering. Okay, so that's pretty early on. Yeah.
So summer meeting you for the first time. I know I shared a bit already. Is there anything else you want to add to your quick story so that people know how I covered it pretty well? Fantastic. So some are completely new to this context of designing your life and going, what? Really? Can I design my own life? Can we go through some of the overall stages just to start into the design thinking for those of us that aren't designers or even engineer minded?
Yeah, I'm an instructor in the design program at Stanford, and we run this thing now. Entering this fall will be our 18th year of operating the Life Design Lab at Stanford. What does that mean? Well, the design program at Stanford, which is kind of a lunatic fringe, it's the oldest interdisciplinary program at the university. It's going on 60 years old. Started in 1963. I took design classes way back in the 70s, and it's important to understand there really are, the way I describe this, two entirely different schools or different communities of designers. And when people you can design your life, they're probably thinking the other one. And so you think of graphic designers and furniture designers and ergonomic designers and, all the kind of people who shape and, draw things, which is, a very important field, and industrial designers, that kind of thing. That's been around for a long time, ever since we first started reshaping the rock to make it into a hammer, that's not what we do at Stanford. At Stanford, we do, the technical term is HCD, human-centered design, which is not a particular craft per se. What it is a methodology of innovation to solve difficult problems. So the way it got renamed design thinking about 15 years ago. So David Kelly, who's the founder of IDEO, the largest design firm in the world, and the tenured leading prof of design at Stanford, is actually the third generation leader of design at Stanford, standing on the shoulders of Bob McKim before him, who we just lost a year or two ago, and then before him again, John Arnold, who came to Stanford from MIT, because MIT said, that's silly, don't do, you can't do that here. And there's still a small cadre of engineers in the mechanical engineer department, faculty, who think what we do is silly, and wish we would go away. But it's not going to happen. So what we do is we provide a tool set of a way to think. As David Kelly said, look, it's not, you don't have to be able to draw, you don't have to be an engineer, you just have to learn to think a certain kind of a way, particularly think a certain kind of way to come up with a new thing we've never done before, particularly never done before in a space we have no data for, which is what you call a wicked problem. You have a tame problem like cold fusion, which we're making some progress on, but that's just a really, really hard tame problem. It's well behaved. Once we figure cold fusion out, we'll make cold fusion generators. It'll work fine. Once we can make a hydrogen car, it'll be fine. It's just really hard. And then there's a wicked problem, which is totally squishy and moves around. And once you solve the problem, you can't reuse that solution because it's totally customized to the context, et cetera, et cetera. and you know no data about it, no equation is going to solve it for you, that's a wicked problem. And being a human being is a wicked. You mentioned you and some of your friends are having children. Oh, that raising a kid thing. Oh yeah, that's a totally wicked problem. Putting a man on the moon. Okay, fine. What do I do with my junior hire? That's really hard. Okay. So we do wicked problems, and the way you do wicked problems in design is have a bunch of ideas, and then you have some prototypes where you try things out, because the only thing you can do is empirical. You can't analyze it intellectually. You have to try it actually. And then we get people really good at having ideas and really good at prototype iteration. And then once you find the prototype, it works well enough, you keep it, and we call that your thing. In the product world, it was a product. It was a mouse or a laser printer. In the life world, it's the way I'm currently living. So that's a semester course on design thinking in about 3 minutes.
Perfect. So I think in your book, you say assessing is such a huge part, right? Without which we can't move forward because you don't know what your problem is, what you want, all of that. Can you talk about different categories in which we can break the initial assessing into, and how we can, or elaborate on how to assess our current likes, dislikes, what brings us joy, all of that?
Sure, yeah. So, the way we've taught the design process at Stanford for literally over 50 years has this 5-step hexagon thing we call the caterpillar. And of course, it looks nice and linear, and it's never done linearly. It's highly recursive. And the 5 steps are empathy, definition, ideation, prototyping, and test. So you start with empathy, deeply understanding what's going on. Most people, when something goes badly, the first question they ask is, what did I do wrong? And that's a terrible question for a couple of reasons. Number one, it makes 2 massively dysfunctional presuppositions. When something goes badly, what did I do wrong? Number one, it assumes that you did something wrong, which is not necessarily true at all. And it assumes that had you done it right, it would have worked. And that's absolutely not true. You can do everything right and it still doesn't go well. So the first question isn't, what did I do wrong? The first question is just, what's going on? The objective stand, the empathetic, just what happened? Let's be clear, in decision-making science, the correlation between a great decision, which way am I going to go, what thing will I do, and a positive outcome is, you're a smart Cal student, so what do you think the statistical correlation between a good decision and a good outcome is?
Very little.
0. No correlation whatsoever. You can do a brilliant job of making a decision which has no authoritative influence on the future whatsoever. Now, if you run a parallel universe 1,000 times, the good decision makers will win out more often than the bad decision makers. But a good decision doesn't make anything happen. It just means you've kind of guessed what the future might be a little better than the other guy. But that has no authoritative causality influence. So, we're making this stuff up as we go. Life is an improv skit. I'm just an improv trainer. So back to your how do we get started thing. You start with the way things really are, which means step 0, which was always true even when I'm designing as a product, but is profoundly true when I'm designing a life. Bill and I say step 0 is acceptance. You cannot solve a problem you're not willing to have, and you can't apply design thinking anywhere other than this place called here in reality. We're an entirely reality-based process. No shoulding. I really should have majored in econ. Well, thank you for sharing, but you didn't. So let's just start with where you are. And where you are is perfect because it's true. So how you start with what's working is we put a positive spin on things. We're optimists, which we think helps, and there's a reason for that. It's not just because we think it's cute. But it begins, the primary tool in the book is what we call the good time journal. So the first thing to do, if you really don't know what the heck is next, is just watch yourself. And the hardest part is not modifying your behavior, not trying to improve yourself. Like, just be you. And at the end of each day, there's a little form we have that, like, what did you do? What was the activity? How did you enjoy it? Did it give you energy or not? And just track what's going on so you can catch yourself in the act of doing stuff that works for you and catch yourself in the act of doing stuff that, not so much. And that's the raw material that starts going into then what do I want to go start evaluating and understanding about the outside world. The short version of the book, which we came up with on a live TV interview one day, it's not they wanted a 1-sentence version of the book. We gave them 4 sentences, but it's still only 10 words and fixed on one Post-it note. So if you haven't got time to read the book, here's the Post-it note. Get curious, talk to people, try stuff, tell your story. It's 10 words. Get curious, talk to people, try stuff, tell your story. That's all you need.
Perfect. I'm going to come back and I'm going to write that down. I'll put it on
the second book.
Cliff Notes. As you were talking, I just thought of so many things, because in parenthood, right, you can do the, why is my child like this? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? All the things. So stop doing that, everyone. Do the what are we, what's going on? That's
no, by the way, it's not a parenting show. Well, it kind of is. And it's not my stuff, and I seldom refer to other people's stuff, but I'm not all that big on, parenting books and what have you. But there are 2 people I do recommend. Dan Siegel, who's a brilliant attachment theorist and now works on consciousness, but Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline, fabulous stuff. Run, Don't Walk. And an old school, but I still think the best book on parenting I ever read, and I didn't read that many, by H. Stephen Glenn, called How to Raise Self-Reliant Children in a Self-Indulgent World.
Oh.
He died too young in his 50s, but he and his wife had a couple of kids, and he's a psychologist, and he says, we really like doing this. Maybe we ought to, walk our talk. So they then foster care and adopted 14 more or something, or 8 more kids, and all of whom came out fine. So it looks like we know what we're doing. And I went to a live conference with Stephen Glenn, and all the parents are asking these incredibly anxious questions, And he finally goes, "Look, people, cut it out. Let's get clear about something. Your children are much more committed to you being a successful parent than you are, because they have no option. They're stuck with you. So they're going to give you a tremendous amount of forgiveness. Here's the thing. If you get it right 51% of the time, you're fine. They will forgive you the rest. Relax, okay? Just calm down. Your anxiety is not helping your children." So I'm not saying being a crappy parent half the time works, but what I'm saying is there's a lot more forgiveness than you think.
Yeah, I love that. And Dan Siegel's book is amazing too. I've read it and enjoyed it. So okay. Good recommendations.
Back to your interview. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it also made me think of, right, in our work life, career life, we also do the questions of, should I have taken that other position? Should I have done all this thing? But again, we come back to, okay, what's going on now? What do I like? What do I not like? How do I move forward? So you have a new book coming out.
And on that, gee, what did I do? It didn't, I took the McKinsey job. I hated it. Oh my God, what do I do? When you were taking those Cal, I had kids come to office hours all the time going, when one kid goes, "I'm really struggling at Cal." "Oh, what's the problem?" "Well, it's a really competitive school." I kind of go, "That's actually in the brochure," he goes, "Yeah, but I didn't really realize it." Kind of, and the campus is really big. I go, and there's a map. You could, that. I mean, and it's really hard. I go, "Yeah, this is all, and it's right in the middle of a city." I kind of go, "This is all known stuff. None of this is a secret. Did you come and visit? No. Did you talk to anybody who went here? No. Why did you come? It's the best school." It has no business being there. It's a terrible place. Get your ass out of here. You're in the wrong place. But so when you make a mistake, then you do ask the question, because you kind of go, "Oh my God, seemed like a good idea at the time." And 90% of the time when people say that phrase, they mean, "But it was a terrible idea, and I'm really ticked off at my prior self for making such a bad decision and landing me in this horrible place I don't want to be." So you're very mad at your regretted prior stupid self. And when I actually debrief that situation, which I've done thousands of times now, 98% of the time, it was a good idea. You just didn't understand that decision theory stuff, that it has no correlation to causality. And those other 7 billion people did a bunch of stuff you hadn't planned on. So even if you do everything right, it was a good idea at the time, and it just didn't work. I now know one way not to be a management consultant. So when something goes really poorly, and even really poorly with heavy cost, because it can be a really costly exit process. That quick U-turn of the cul-de-sac isn't always easy. But what you do have to ask yourself the question is, okay, did I in fact do a bad job back? Oh, I mailed it in. I knew better. My friends were all going, "Don't do it, Amy, don't do it. It's not," I'm like, okay, I've now learned to not ignore my own wisdom, or no, if I could go back in time and be that person, my future self would do a better job back in 1973 or whatever. But he wasn't there at the time, so we were stuck with this 19-year-old. What are you going to do? He was doing the best he could. So you really do want to be gracious with your past, including being brutally honest when you screwed up. But if you didn't screw up, don't be blaming the past for not having lived in the future. That is a dead end for sure. And with your kids, for God's sake. You know some of them. My eldest son, who just turned 42. I'm David John IV. He's the fifth. He's got the sixth. I mean, we can't think of a new name. When he was growing up, I pulled him aside. I said, "Son, you do know you're getting the worst parent." He goes, "What?" Well, you get the rookie every time. We're just practicing on you. And your brother and your sister, who coming behind, have much better parents than you do. And they will never notice and they will never thank you. But I just want to thank you on behalf of your brother and your sister for putting up with all the prototyping we're doing on parenting. And I hope it works out for you. So good luck with that. That's the deal. We're all learning our way forward.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I should go have that talk with my son. And then tell my younger one, you should thank him.
They'd be very grateful, but they won't be.
Yeah. So you have a new book coming out designing specifically your work life. And I'm guessing you've had many conversations with people, especially in our area here in Silicon Valley, that are burnt out, quit, did complete shifts in their career.
Yeah.
Can you give us a sneak peek on how did this book come about? How do you help people think through burnouts and moving forward in these scary complete shifts?
Yeah, Designing a New Work Life. It's actually out twice now. So it came out February 25th of 2020. 1 week later to the day my wife got a terminal cancer diagnosis. 1 week later to the day after that, COVID's shelter in place started and California tried to burn down. So 2020 did not go as planned. Yes. And my beloved wife died at the end of that year. And, and it was a heck of a, and both Bill's mother and mother-in-law died that year. And I was a mile from a evacuation line on the California fires. I mean, it was a disaster. We wrote the book because Penguin asked us to. They said, "Hey, we think we want to do another one. We think the work world is really important to people." And then COVID hit and all this other stuff completely rearranged our lives. And then the president of Penguin Random House called up and said, "We really like the book. The world changed totally. We're going to re-release it a year later, write a bunch of new stuff about post-pandemic reality, and we'll re-release the book." So the second edition, Designing Your New Work Life, has 4 new chapters, a new introduction, and a whole bunch of stuff on disruption design. And we define a disruption as any big change after which you find yourself saying, "Whoa, things will never be the same again." And they're going to have a personal disruption, like your wife dies 10 years before the contract's up. Words will be had later. Or a regional disruption, all of Northern California burned down, or a global disruption called COVID and the pandemic and the hybrid work model. But they're all disruptions, and disruptions are accelerating. So you got to get good at this. Things are never the same again. So that's the context of where the book came from. And the big idea here, first of all, the best person to give you a new job is you. So the centerpiece idea in designing your life is there's not one right answer to your life. There's no one perfect you. There are lots of good yous. Let's go try some of them out. And you'll never know, by the way. And the big idea.
That's the scary part, right? The trying.
Part, yeah. So the second book, the big idea is the best person to give you a better job is you. And half the ideas we have for that don't even require your boss's approval. But on the work thing, particularly for the first career crisis of the 30-something, early 40-something, right? We're bumping into a lot of that. I know a bunch of those people. I've got 6 adult kids all married. They're all doing that. Part of it is the first big, really serious change, not merely because you were dialing in your career, but and now I'm not sure this is me anymore, right? After 15 years of one very monolithic career direction, my youngest daughter, is now actually briefly unemployed, rethinking everything. So right in the middle of it. And one of the most scary things about that first big change is I thought I had it figured out. And look, we tell people in their 18s to 20s, you're going to live to 100, you're going to work till you're 85 years old, you're going to have about 30 or 40 jobs and 3 or 4 careers. No, I'm not kidding. That includes the woman I'm talking to. And that sounds fine until it happens to you. which brings up the question of changes happen one of two ways: inside out or outside in. Inside out, like I think I'd like to pivot to teaching now. Off we go. I'm going to become a teacher. That in that level. And then there's outside in, like, oh, we don't need you anymore. ChatGPT can write that press release just fine. Go home. And like, oh, most of life is about outside in. Most of the big, if you sit down with older people and tell me about the, the half dozen to 10 inflection moments that determined everything, and you can plot these, right? That moment, that change, there's about eight or 10 in the average life. If you add the actual moments up, they're about 15 minutes of time, real time, when things really came to a head. Most of them are not voluntarily chosen. So dealing with big changes not of my choosing is simply part of the human experience. But if you're a powerful, highly educated person who's had things kind of your way for a while, you sort of bought into this thing that you're in charge. And the first time life shows, thanks for sharing. No, you're not. That's a tough one, because you believed yourself, and other people around you still act like it's true, or their resumes and their circumstances look like it's true. So you probably screwed up, and what's wrong with you? So getting over that's a huge activation energy. By the way, that insight, oh, it's not me, it's just the way things are, that has nothing to do with what you do next. It has no contribution to your design at all, other than this acceptance thing. That's why step 0 is acceptance. So the first big task in a pivot is accepting that it's true. It's 2.5 years now. Claudia, every now and then I'm walking down the hall going like, okay, cut it out, honey. Come on back. Let's go. This dying thing's not working for me. Thanks for sharing, Dave. It's not, I just literally officiated distributing the ashes of a good friend of mine last week on a boat. It's just so weird that he died. Death is so weird. Like, where did, his name is Buzz. Where did Buzz go? Where is Buzz? Buzz is gone. What do you mean Buzz is not coming back? What do you mean Buzz is not coming back? Come on, Buzz, come on back. So life's full of this really weird stuff. And as you're pivoting into that, if you have some ideas about what you want to do, then you do the talk to people, try stuff, tell your story thing. And that's a highly iterative prototyping experimentation process that's very generative. But if you don't know like I really like the McKinsey thing is not working for me anymore, and I have no idea what's next, that's a little bit scary. And now you got to dig deep and start curating your curiosity in order to come up with something at all. I'll stop there because we're talking too much, but no, it's a very dynamic process, and I think the hardest career change is the first one. Yeah, because you think it was supposed to work.
Yeah. Well,
you're just wrong.
I've been at my company, gosh, I think it's almost going to be 17 years now. I said 2006. Yep, same company.
You're an anomaly. Nobody does that anymore.
I know. I have, yeah. Yeah, that's my full-time corporate gig, and then, like you're saying, during the pandemic, we're all here, we're all in the same house. So I started doing different things, and that kind of led me to here of just putting on a summit, because people kept asking me, like, how do you find the time to do your YouTubes or your, food Instagram or all these things that I enjoy doing, and kind of give me,
Well, that brings up the great resignation and the big quit thing. And we've got a whole thesis on that. That's a whole nother interview, but just a quick point of view. People keep asking, and I've got, quotes from Gallup and from HBR and all these smart people about what happened, and the new problem that is created by hybrid work and all that. And our premise is that's all crap. What we have there is no new problem. There is a new intolerance for an incredibly old problem. If you look at the Gallup poll data on engagement, we've had between 2/3 and 3/4 of workers in North America, 85 to 90% in Europe, and 95% in Japan. Workers disengaged, not fully engaged, and about 1/5 or 1/4 of that set are what we now call quiet quitting, actively disengaged, like, nope, just faking it. A quiet quitting is a new name for a very old behavior. Just take the money and fake it. So this has been around for 22 years, according to Gallup, which is when they started asking the question, and it lasted a lot longer before that. So people are like, oh yeah, put up with a crap job, and it doesn't matter to me existentially, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but they're paying me okay. I owe, so off to work I go. That's been around for a long, long time. And 25% of Americans would give you back their last raise if you fired their boss. People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. So goes the cliche, and that's largely true, including those bosses you want to quit. They feel the same way about their boss. And so what happened in the pandemic is when hybrid work was required, I suddenly have more autonomy. Micromanagers went crazy because they're supervisory overseeing behavior, not managerially overseeing accountability and deliverables. It's a fundamental shift in management thinking. So the old school micromanagers went batshit crazy during the pandemic because they can't watch you all the time and they know you're wearing your pajamas, and it makes them nuts. And the real managers like, oh, we have to have deliverables and accountability and trust. Trust shot up, flexibility shot up, which means I'm being treated more like my human full three-dimensional self, a little less like my role-based two-dimensional self. And that's an empowerment move. That was an unconscious, unintentional empowerment move. And guess what? Empowerment's kind of a one-way street. The people don't want to go back to slavery. So, oh yeah, come back in the office. No, thanks for sharing. Try again. So what happened for a lot of people was they started having a higher degree of ownership of their lives. And that higher degree of ownership changed their consciousness, and their consciousness then took another look at their work and like, wait a minute, I don't like this as much as I thought I did. It's suddenly worse. No, you're just suddenly different. So a whole bunch of people are awakening at a higher level and a little surprised with their data and not quite sure what to do yet. So it's not a new problem. It's just a new consciousness of an old problem.
Yeah, I resonate with all of that. Because you're going, we did this for 2.5 years. What's different now, right? Like, why can't you trust
you are?
But
you are, yeah.
And
you just got to take responsibility for that.
Yeah. So I'm pivoting a little bit.
Sure.
What about the people that say, I really like my job, but I wish I could go part-time? They've already said no, or like some of these other changes that they want to make. But like, if I could design my way, it would be part-time, or it would be, some aspect of their job. What would you say to them?
Well, let me sort of start at the snarky end of that. I mean, pretty often, somebody, 25 or, 31 will call me and say, hey, can we get together and have coffee? Well, what do you want to talk about? Well, I really want to talk about becoming a thought leader, because I really want to be a thought leader, like you. And I never take those calls because, thought leader is a name somebody describes of you when you did something interesting, not like a job you can get. And what they're really saying is, I think, what I'd really like to do is have somebody pay me $250,000 a year for just kind of like acting like myself and being a reasonably cool person about 15, 20 hours a week. That's a really good gig. Can you help me get that gig? No. I don't know who has that gig. And so backing into it, I really want my job and everything that goes with it just in half the time. Well, that very often ends up becoming what we call a gravity problem. A gravity problem is not a problem because it's inactionable. If the situation you're facing that you don't like is inactionable, it is not what we would call a problem. A problem is a thing you can act on and solve, or at least do something about. A circumstance is a thing that all you can do is accept. And that acceptance, by the way, is the doorway to reframing a different problem. So, I really like the work I'm doing. I've gone to my organization and said I'd like to do it part-time, and they've said, no effing way. And if you want to go part-time, we'll fire you and get somebody in here who will work the 60 hours a week that we really need. Now, you may not like that answer, but they have the authority to have that answer. So now, by the way, I think how you ask and being clever can give you a lot more options than you might think. I think sometimes, did you know that I've been doing this for 25 hours a week for the past 6 months? Oh no, tell me more about that. So if I literally just worked with somebody, said like, if you're willing to take a 50% cut in pay, they might be more open-minded. I want a 10% cut in pay and a 50% cut in time. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So part of that is you got to be clever. But even if you've been clever and they say no, that's not a problem to be solved. It's a reality to accept. Like, oh, how can I, do this as, take my side gig, make it a front gig? Are there other organizations that do this differently? Can I find somebody who's willing to job share and make a proposal? You got to come up with what people are willing to do. So you got to respect the autonomy of organizations that hire or clients or what have you. Do I really want to go independent? Go be a gig person? just take a look at what it is that's required and do that as objectively as you can. I mean, the organization that doesn't want to let you work part-time, it's not about you. It's about their mindset. I mean, if they say no, and you really do believe they're just misinformed and you're the expert on your job, see if you can't say, look, how about we run a prototype for 1 month? Let me try this thing. At the end of it, it doesn't work, fine. So get a little more clever. Bosses are more flexible than they might appear. And by the way, the big quit still, last year, 47 million people quit their jobs. Talent departments are desperate for people right now. It's a pretty negotiable time right now. So I would get clever and I would get flexible. But if you want to do something different, first of all, nobody's in the business of making you happy. Nobody's in the business of, oh yeah, my job is to make you happy. We're in the business, we make cowboy boots here, and if you can help us sell more cowboy boots, that'd be great. If you're happier making our cowboy boots profitably, then we're thrilled about that. We don't mind you being happier, but we make cowboy boots. So you got to contextualize your propositions in the business, not first and foremost in you. It's actually not about you. You're about you, but they're not about you.
That's fantastic. I don't know if it's advice or sharing of information. I know you had mentioned a number of your kids. Well, you said your daughter was, going through a big life decision. You've had kids that are going through similar things. What do you tell your kids, or even your students, not the 19-year-old one, but what do you tell them when they're making some of these big life decisions or thinking through it and seeing if it's the right thing?
Well, yeah, two of them are going through a big deal right now, and everybody would like to know the future. I just want to do the right thing. I'm sure. And I just want to do the right thing, and I want it to work out, and I want it to make the world a better place, and I want it to be financially secure, and I want to love every minute of it. That's what I really want, And then if those are your criteria for a good decision, then anything short, they're like, oh God, I blew it. So with anybody who comes to office hours, even the people who share some of my DNA, it's really the same conversation. Like, look, we're going to do the best we can, and there's a risk, and it might work and it might not, and it'll probably be a little different than you had in mind. So let's get good at real-time adaptation. This again goes back to acceptance. Like, okay, so two of them, my kids are thinking about making a change right now. What you have to recognize is take responsibility for if you've hit a critical mass of readiness to pivot out. You have to understand what you're doing is you're going from a thing called a known to a thing called an unknown. Now you may be going to a very well-known company in a clearly defined product management role. It's very predictable. It's still for you. It's not. I haven't worked with those people. I haven't worked in that company. I haven't worked in that office. I haven't sold those products before, that services before. So there's a bunch of unknowns, and the thing you're leaving, cold. So first of all, the before and after assessment is totally unfair. The known thing, and you understand entirely, and you got used to understanding entirely, and you'd like the same clarity about the future that you have about the past, but it's not available. So you just do the best you can, and then on the other side, we'll deal with that as it arises. Because my BTO versus BDO, the best theoretical option versus the best doable option. Once you've got to a critical mass of it's time to make a move or it's time to make a decision, then you got to own that. So the first thing you've done is you decided to decide.
That's the hard part. Yeah. Yeah.
So once you've decided to decide, now I'm a decider. Now I'm going to go and make a choice. And once I make that choice, first of all, then people, I really want to figure it out. Most of the time you can't figure it out. And most of the time it doesn't matter that you can't figure it out. What do you mean, Dave? Because life is actually more often a multiple choice test than it is an essay contest. Because in most situations, when I'm about to make a change, the truth is there really are only 2 or 3, maybe 4 actually viable, doable, available in the real world in real time options available to you. You can't necessarily do anything you can imagine. It's gonna be this or it's that. I literally bought a new motorcycle yesterday, and it boiled down to one of these three models, and they're not the same. And do you want the sports suspension or do you not? I mean, it's like check the box or don't, So life is actually like that. So it's going to be, it's not like, any old job, but that company, this company, or, the part-time gig thing. And now, once you figure out what your short list of actually viable alternatives is, suddenly you went to multiple choice from essay contest. So you don't need to understand your problem. You don't need to know the future. You don't need to know everything. All you need to know is 1% more than the absolute minimum information necessary to decide, is it door number 1, 2, or 3? I don't know everything about door number 3. I don't know about all these other things that are unknown about door number 3, but I know enough to know it is 3, not 2, not 1. In fact, what I really need to know is it not 1 and it's not 2? Ergo, it is 3. Many decisions are double negatives. It's not that. So it must be that. And once you get down to that, then you say, great, let's go. You make the decision, you walk through door number 3, and then we'll figure out the rest on the other side. And it takes, after you've done that about 10 times, you kind of get used to, oh yeah, there's this risk thing. So do your homework, but understand a whole bunch of what's important to you, you're going to figure out on the other side of the decision.
And my husband is an engineer, so maybe that's why but he's much better at thinking like nothing is undoable or unchangeable in the future. Like we try something, if it doesn't work, we can always pivot, or whereas
now you can't always literally back out like, well, we shouldn't have had the third child.
Yeah.
No, really. I mean, my first wife and I, Vicky, my kid's mom, we divorced long ago after 24 years. But that's a whole nother story to talk about a prototype. But we had 2 boys. We always wanted to have 3 kids, but we also said, do we really want 3 children or do we just want a girl? We don't want to be in regret about a human. So Robbie and David are 2 years apart, and Lisa came along 4 years later. She was supposed to come along 3 years later. We spent a year going, are we sure we want a person or just a girl? Because we just want a girl. Is that really fair to create a person?
Yeah.
It's but you're sitting there on the couch watching 11 o'clock news going, well, do you want to finish the news or just go make a person? Like, that's such a weird reality. And we finally decided to make a person, and we got a girl, which we were happy about. But our next door neighbors had 6 boys at the time. They had 6 boys. Do you want to go down that road? And they had planned on having 2 kids because they wanted 1 of each. And they got up to 6. And finally, the mother goes, Earl, no,
we're done. Yeah, we're done.
Stop it, Earl. So this thing about the decision-making process. You have to understand what it is you really want, and which decisions have some irreversibility to them, and then you accept that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes, you're absolutely correct. Some things are not reversible.
Yeah, I mean, a tattoo, or if you're considering the trans surgery, like, wow, okay. I mean, these are decisions you think about differently than well, I could always trade in the motorcycle on a Mini Cooper. That's so no, I think life's full of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we like to end by giving everyone a quick action or challenge to start today so that they can make those changes and then come back and ask questions or tell us how it went. Can you share your challenge for
So Bill and I are right now in the process of trying to decide whether or not we're going to write a 3rd book. And a 3rd book, you've helped all these people design their lives. And then once you design a wonderful life, are you experiencing a wonderful life? So how to live the well-designed life is a different question than how to design a better life. Because a lot of people design a better life and then they don't get one. And what we've noticed is there are sort of 2 planes of existence operating all the time. There's what we're going to call or fields of operation. There's the transactional field, win, lose, get stuff done, sign the contract, take the job, book the babysitter, whatever it is. That's all transaction stuff. And frankly, we spend a ton of our time in the transaction world, which is pretty dualistic, by the way. Win, lose, yes, no, you, me, 2-party stuff. And then there's what we call the superflow world. People drop into an experience of flow, right? We love flow. And flow is when you're totally one with what's going on. And our premise is the flow world is actually available all the time. So we're going to call that the superflow field. It's running all the time, like an aquifer under the surface of the transactional field. if you can tap into it. And one of the attributes, and all 6 of the design mindsets we talk about, if you take a step up, you move from a design competency to a design consciousness. Now you're living like a designer, not just acting like one, and you're actually seeing the world in a different way. And the key one is curiosity. Our favorite mindset is curiosity. There's a long tee up on your challenge question, but I have not forgotten where we're going. And you take curiosity up to wonder. And so the challenge is, can you put on your wonder glasses and see what's wondrous in front of you at least 2 or 3 times, at any moment during the day, at least 2 or 3 times a day, stop and go, wait, put on my wonder glasses. What's wonderful, wonder-full that's happening in front of me right now? And then start capturing those things, and the quality of your existence will skyrocket. It's not doing something different, it's seeing it differently.
Is this similar to gratitude?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So, yeah, the gratitude exercise is positive psychology's #1 favorite thing, which is really, by the way, based upon the prayer of examine, which is a 4-step process going back to Ignatius. And a lot of psychology is picking up where wisdom traditions left off, but now we have data, so it's true. And the distinction between existentially entering the wonder field of awe and wonder and being grateful is, first of all, it's real time versus retrospective. And if I'm grateful for the gratefulness, I'm really grateful when this happened, I'm happy about that as an outcome, right? That really is a retroactive happiness capturing of a successful transactional experience. It was great when Amy was so nice to me and gave me an extra $1,000 off on the motorcycle because I know her friend Carla. I got the Carla discount on the motorcycle. That was great. I was so grateful when she did that for me. Now that's lovely. It's true. And I'm happier because I remember it. All that's true psychologically, existentially, neurophysiologically, but it's transactional. You know, when I was standing there looking at this, about one of if not the most sophisticated motorcycle, it's the most expensive vehicle I ever bought. You know, dropped damn near 30 grand on a motorcycle. And the thing can make coffee. I mean, you know, it can read your mind. It can tell you what you want to do. It knows where you want to go. I mean, you know, it's amazing. And I could just look at that thing and kind of go, and this started with, you know, chipping off flint to make an axe. And this is where we've come. And just being in the wonder of the entire tradition of the human experience, sitting in that motorcycle. That's different than, I really liked it when she gave me a discount. So, yeah, the wonder challenge is literally dropping into a different state of mind. It's not like going in meditation. It's a very active thing. We're active, doable guys. But we're trying to give wonder a bigger chunk of your attention. And we think it could change everything. So it's a little different than the gratefulness exercise, which was retroactive and usually transactional. This is real time and existential.
And I feel like that for me is a lot easier to do in nature. Like when I go camping or in the woods, it's like, oh, everything is so beautiful. It's amazing. Sure. Like, where did this come? So absolutely, applying that into our daily lives, I can see.
Yeah, and I happen to be a spiritual person, and what that means is the creator is coming through the creation all the time, and it's sort of unfiltered. Now, you know, engineered things, but there are more layers between the wonder that lies beneath. You know, but the point being, our premise is, and this is what we're going to try to help people do, it's always and everywhere. As Jesus said, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear. So we're trying to give people eyes and ears.
Perfect. I'm going to bring in my wonder glasses as well.
And a lot of your people are parents, for God's sake. There's this little wondrous thing called your kid.
Yeah. And we often don't see them that way, right? So that's a great reminder.
We're just so glad they didn't get run over that day. You know, we used to say, another day, another victory over child abuse. Yeah. It was kind of like, they make you so nuts. And one of the reasons your listeners are so exhausted is they're in that repetition zone of life. You know, you just do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. I often say, the 2 most thoughtlessly wonderful seasons of life are when you are a small child or you have them. Because particularly as the parent of small children, I never spent those years, I'd get in bed and kind of go, gosh, I hope I'm doing the right thing. That never happened. I just got in bed like, thank God. Okay.
They're still alive.
You know, okay. Can I stop now? Yeah, for a minute. You know, it's not confusing what you're supposed to be doing, but that is exhausting. It is, and it doesn't last forever, by the way. You know, I just turned 70, and by the way, you know, life changes and you have to make new decisions. Never stops. If you're paying attention,
Changes, yeah.
there is no quitting, you know, being a growing person. That's the good news.
Yeah. Anything else you want to leave our moms before we wrap up?
Well, you know, you know, first of all, living intentionally is a major commitment.
Mhm.
It is a major. I've got a small group of guys I've been hanging out with for 50 years. My support group, TD3, Tom and 3 Davis, I'm the founding Dave, is 50 years old this year. We know each other really well. And the conversation for the last 16 weeks has been, because I'm 70 and I'm a little older than all they. In fact, the two of us are 70 and the rest are about to be. And so we're kind of going, okay, we're becoming elders now. You know, there's a lot less runway in front of us than behind us. You know, I'm pretty sure this is the last decade where my body has any chance of keeping up with what my mind has in mind. And so we're asking the question, how to become an elder? Well, and what feels really clear to me, and I think all four of us, is I feel like I'm literally at a junction in life, and either, hey, I'm 70, you know, I raised all these kids, I started these companies, I wrote this damn book, you know, you know, I gave it the office, and it's my turn. I can go ride my motorcycle, and you know, I'll talk to Amy, and I'll leave a little behind, but it's my turn, you know, and basically let's just coast this thing in and put the airplane on the runway softly, you know, or like now you're 70, you have finally, you know, started to get some stuff done. You kind of know who you are. You may be even a little bit over yourself. And now you've got your bachelor's degree in being a person, and it's time to do the graduate work. You know, am I going to spend the last 10, 20 years of my life coasting, or the last 10, 20 years of my life actually stepping up? The way I put it is, you know, is my goal to arrive in heaven as though I'd already been there? Mm-hmm. Or just and there, I don't think it's necessarily a moral question. I have friends who are on, you know, path A, and I don't judge them for that, but it's different. So you have to decide, and I think you start deciding at those first transitions, those first involuntary transitions. Am I actually signed up for this life thing? Am I just trying to get through, or am I trying to turn into my next better self? Which, by the way, is difficult and kind of a pain, and it never stops. So if that's what you're signed up for, you know, pace yourself. Pace yourself. More is coming. By the way, it does get easier.
It does. Thank you.
If you pay attention and you try this, you can get better. You can get better at being Amy. Yeah. You can even get better at becoming a better Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sleep fine. I'm not nearly as upset as I used to.
Well, thank you, Dave, for sharing such a great perspective to live the life we desire, since we only have one, right? We only have one, and we can only do things one at a time. So,
okay.
Everyone, go to the challenge, tell us how it went, and be sure to come back for more amazing summits.
Put on those wonder glasses.
Put on those wonder glasses.
See ya.